I came from a life where it was very poverty stricken and very lack and, just not a lot of anything. And
another way of saying that, we're really not trying to just put words in your mouth, but we can't help it. What you just said is, I came from a specifically poignant beginning and environment that caused me early on in my life to launch a lot of rockets of desire into my vortex. Right. So my vortex got a really early start.
An extreme of circumstances.
And so I have always been a very emotional being.
A few years ago, I entered into a relationship with someone, and all the things that I didn't experience when I was younger, I really tried to experience in that relationship. And for 4 years, I really tried to make it work, and it just wasn't going to happen. And the theme of that relationship was I was less than, he was the more successful one, and my life wouldn't be very much without that person.
But we have to interrupt again. This is what we were just talking about, isn't it? That efforting right. without doing the vibrational work,
right.
just it didn't get any better,
right.
because the relationship did not. You didn't extract from it the opportunity to come into alignment.
Right.
You can't get your alignment from someone else.
Right. Exactly.
You only get your alignment from aligning with who you really are.
Well, and it was such an extreme contrast to who I really felt and knew who I was that...
So you're saying to us that you had a life experience that, by observing it, had trained you into a vibrational frequency where your expectation of well-being was not all that high.
Right.
So you had sort of low expectation
yes.
of thriving. But then you met someone who was more prosperous, who afforded you more of the things that you thought you wanted.
Right.
Sort of like we were talking about earlier, the money, the money and the better life. But we're speaking from your perspective. But my frequency didn't change that much. Just by observing the different things around me, it didn't do the vibrational work, and
right.
so it didn't stick.
Right.
So this, and it is such a wonderful juxtaposition of conversations, because that's exactly the reason for your question is, and we know you know the answer. In theory, you're just wanting to help you get there vibrationally. But so what you're pointing out to us all in such a vivid and wonderful way is, I understand now, you say, that my vibration has to change
right.
in order for me to get what I'm wanting.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I experienced. I went through that for 4 years, and I said, you know what, screw you. This isn't who I am, and everything that I've been for 4 years is not me. And I just got angry.
But wait, you see, so what were you talking about that isn't you? What parts of that
just
weren't
trying
you?
to fit the mold of who he thought I should be, and trying to make it work with him by becoming that.
So this is what we were talking about earlier, that whether it is a parent or whether it is a lover, often there are people in your experience who are holding you as their object of attention, and because they don't know about the vortex, and
right.
they're not self-realizing, they're not coming into alignment with who they are. They're asking the world around them to behave in certain ways to keep them happy.
Right.
So you discovered the flaw in that
right.
pretty fast, didn't you?
Yeah, and my anger grew to such an intensity where I said, screw this is over. I'm going to be happy regardless of whether this relationship happens or not. I don't need you to be happy. I'm going to be happy regardless.
But the thing that's interesting about this is that even looking back on that, you see, whenever you feel negative emotion, it always means the same thing. Negative emotion means you've got a point of view that varies from the point of view that the source within you has.
Right.
So for example, even as you look back on that relationship and the trauma of it and the discomfort of it,
yeah.
as you're saying, well, I just left in anger and screw you and I didn't need that. All of that anger is because the source within you isn't feeling any of that, because the source within you is feeling only appreciation for your opportunity to expand.
Right.
And this is the thing that's so interesting about interpersonal relationships with everyone. If you could see everyone that you share your planet with as someone who is an opportunity for you to sharpen your preferences, which means sharpen your expansion. And then you could make what they're doing and how they're being, whether it's good or bad, whether it's wonderful or awful, if you could let that then be irrelevant while you then turn your undivided attention toward your relationship with your expansion, you would be joyful, 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 joyful immediately. Yeah. Are you following that? Let us spell it out just a little more carefully. So you're having a relationship with someone, and for whatever reason, it's not working for you. You feel maybe they're picking on you, maybe they're not behaving in a way that pleases you, whatever. There's tension and frustration and anger and discord. It's a dysfunctional relationship, and you're struggling within it. So as you're having this relationship, and yet you're determined, till death do us part. I made a promise. I made a commitment. I don't want to go. I don't want another breakup. I don't want to give up half my stuff. So you dig in and you stay anyway, even though it's not pleasant. But here's the good news in all of this. So in all of that, knowing what you don't want, you're launching these rockets of desires. So the person is rude, you want them to be nicer. You're rude, you want to be nicer. You feel inferior, you want to feel confident. You feel confused, you want clarity. You feel not enough of something, you want more of it. In other words, it's just this constant expanding experience. So that rascal who harassed you into expansion is also the rascal that seems to be the reason you're not having it. Because it's so vivid. You keep looking at it and fighting over it and thinking about it. And
after, I gave up. I just gave up on that. But
maybe, but it is so active in your vibration.
Right.
Every word out of your mouth. In other words, you might as well be right there with that person. Right. Because the vibration is as if you all still are.
Right.
You see what we're getting at?
Right.
Because the vibration hasn't shifted. It may be less intense because it's not happening on a daily basis.
Right.
But this is the thing that we so want you to hear, all of you to hear, is that the problem, whatever it is, whether it's a money problem or a physical body problem or a relationship problem, the problem has caused you to expand, but you can't. But the discord you feel is not because the problem exists. The discord you feel is because you're not letting yourself have the solution. That's the thing that we so want you to hear. In other words, let's say that you're sick, and in your sickness you've got a problem. You say it's problematic to be sick. I don't feel good, and it's a problem to be sick. It could kill me. So in that sickness, you are launching rockets of well-being. So vibrationally speaking, you're weller than you've ever been. And you think that you are worried or frightened because you're sick. You're not worried or frightened because you're sick. You're worried or frightened because you're not keeping up with your expansion. You see what we're getting at? The expansion is calling you and you're not going. That's what negative emotion is. The expansion is calling you and you're not going. That's what anger is. The expansion is calling you. In other words, this relationship that caused this expansion is now irrelevant and doesn't mean diddly squat.
Right.
You don't have to think about it anymore unless you think about it in the way your inner being thinks about it, which was wonderful times, caused so much expansion, so much opportunity to grow, was there at the... Now, we're going to give you something else. You're really going to like this. It's our favorite new analogy. Jerry and Esther and lots of friends and us were on a Panama Canal cruise. So the big ship needs to move from one body of water to another, and there's an 84-foot difference. So there was no contemplation at all of trying to jump it. No rockets on the ships. There were no... They didn't try to get going 500 miles an hour to become airborne enough. Instead, they went from the water that they were floating in into a lock in the Panama Canal that had water at the same level. And then they closed the door behind them and added more water. And up the ship came. And when the water, where the ship now was equal to the water in the next lock, that lock opened and the ship just moved over there. And then they closed the door behind them. Then they added more water, and up the ship came again. And then they just opened the lock and over it went. Just so natural and so easy. Took a while. Wasn't instant, wasn't fast. In fact, it took a long while. So, you were born into an environment that had some of what you wanted and some of what you didn't want, which caused you to launch rockets of desire to a level that you now seek. So you're now no longer happy where you are, but you can't just jump up there. So look at this relationship as just the first lock. Because it was a lock, it was a vibration that you could reach. It wasn't the solution to all of your expansion, and it wasn't the eternal relationship that you're looking for, but it was close to where you were. In other words, because the monetary state of being is irrelevant. What is relevant is the vibrational state of being. And so you were two people who were vibrationally very much the same. Even though your physical trappings were very different, you were vibrationally very much the same. You see, and that's why it was a perfect match. But in the beginning, but in the relationship, out of it came so much more that you want. You see.
Well, in just a few short weeks after that ended, I met someone great, and we developed a wonderful relationship. And then within the year, I was promoted twice. I bought a new car. I bought a house, and just out of nothing, it just all happened within the year. And so now I've, that happened a few years ago, and now I'm going on to the third year where I've now digested that creation, and I'm like, well, if I could create that out of those circumstances.
Well, this is the thing, that this is a wonderful story that you're telling us, because it's exactly what we're talking about here. Those who come to you are a vibrational match to you. That's why they come to you. And out of it is born the clarity of who you are. And if you just let your constant awareness be that you want to keep up with you, then what keeps happening is you just keep finding that vibration, and then you find the happiness that you were talking about earlier. You don't find, and we want to be very gentle as we say this, because we're not talking about your relationships not being wonderful, but your key to your happiness is not finding another person who makes you happy. The key to your happiness is any old ornery person in the world that causes you to expand, and you figuring out how to keep up with your expansion. In other words, some of the most tumultuous relationships cause you the greatest expansion. And when you take the expansion, you feel wonderful, and you wouldn't have felt that good or been that much if it hadn't been for the tumultuous relationship that caused you to grow. But you've got to stop giving the credit or the blame to the other person in the relationship and take full responsibility. What we just said to you is there's only one relationship for you to keep your eye on, and that's the relationship between you and your vortex, or between you and who you really are. And when that's what matters most, then you find yourself more in the frequency of the vortex at that higher vibration, where you then are able to see the world through the eyes of Source. And when you do that, then you see the beauty in every one of those people who you've been interacting with. It's possible for you to come together in a relationship, and it's natural that it's the relationship that comes because you are a vibrational match for one another, otherwise it wouldn't be there. And then in the relationship, for you both to launch rockets of desire, and for you both to keep up, so that your relationship that is manifested grows with you as you both grow. In other words, we're not talking about using this one to get to the next lock, and using this one to get to the next lock, and using this one to get to the next lock. But what we really want to help you all do, and we mean this to all of your lovers and partners and husbands and wives around the world, we want your relationship with them to be less important to you than you have been making it. Because when you make your relationship with another person who you can't control dominant, then what happens is you lose your ability to be happy. You lose your ability for your alignment because you can't control what they do.
Right.
But when you let your relationship with who you really are be dominant so that you are continually looking through the eyes of Source, now you can address that relationship from your aligned in the vortex relationship, and now that relationship can be as delicious as it once was, or as it can continue to be delicious as you are evolving together, you see.